Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mariner Spirit. I'm Greg, and I'm your host, and we've got another great guest tonight. But before we get to him, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the people I support. And number one, it would be Potographs with Tim Miley. And Potographs is a nonprofit organization that was designed to go ahead and help sheltered animals. And what happened with how that was started was Tim is a paranormal investigator who lost his dog, and he had such a strong love for the dog. He didn't know how he was going to make it. And finally, he came to a conclusion, and the conclusion was he had a picture of him and his pup, and he went ahead and he had copies made, and he went to one of the local events and got a table and went ahead and started selling pictures of him and his dog and autographed them. And what happened was he started to make money, so he does a bunch of events every year. He does a lot of locations. He has a great list of people that speak for him, all people in the paranormal community that support him, and they do an awesome effort. So if you ever get an opportunity to see a Potographs event, please do so and say hello to Tim. The secondly is PKC is Paranormal Kicks Cancer, Chris Gaskowski and Alex Wilkinson, and they're from down in Florida, and they are a couple who do basically the same kind of thing where they go ahead and they do fundraisers. So they'll do haunted events and they'll do locations, and what they do is the money that they raise on their events and that goes to cancer research. So that's another great one. And then the third one is the Jessica Petrie Foundation. And Jessica Petrie is was the daughter of Howard Petrie, who was the founder of Pun or Paralanx Now, or whatever we're going to come up with a new name for. And that was a foundation that was a resource for expecting mothers and families of pregnant women with mental illness. So that became I want to say that's the second year for the Petrie Foundation. And if you get an opportunity, please go ahead and contribute to any of these if you can. Next, I always talk about my authors, the authors of the books, of paranormal books that we go ahead and see all the time. But it's the authors I support, and those are people that have been on the podcast, and I sort of share or support them and their works as far as their writing is concerned. And I'll just go ahead and mention the names. And I start off with Bruce Holliday, Tobias Wayland, Adam Benedict, Kathy Kressel, Barnaby Jones, Sherilyn Cotter, Dr. Heatherly Langdon, Lynn Monet, Ron Iacovetti, Victoria Munday, Tony Rathman, Natalie Jones, Patty Negri, Sylvia Schultz, Amelia Cotter, Rex Nielsen, David Sloan, and Christina Bloom. Before I bring my guest in, there there were some things that came up that were quite interesting. If you get an opportunity to go ahead and look it up, do so on your own time. And that's about Voyager 1 and all the news that came out about that yesterday, I think it was. And we had quite a discussion about it last night. And it seemed to have come back alive, and not only come back alive, but it actually set its own different heading for where it was going. And it's 14.5 billion miles away from Earth right now. And it actually went ahead and changed its changed. It's like somebody steering it somewhere. So there's a lot of weird things that are happening, but that is one thing that it's just mind-boggling to think about it. But I want to do this right now. Uh, I've known my guest for probably 5 or 6 years now, and Bob is a Burnell is a amazing person who's always been on a lot of the podcasts that we share mutually with comments and things like that over the years. And he's a very respectable person from the East Coast. He's from up in Massachusetts, and I'm going to bring him on now. So here's Bob. Welcome, Bob.
Well, thank you.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like we were saying before we started that we'd be in a position finally to go ahead and get you on, and not only that, but we will have another show probably in August or September, just basically because you do have a partner in crime.
Karen, yeah.
Is Karen R. Daniels, and
Yep.
it's something that not only is it Karen that's going to show up, but we're going to be able to go ahead and Bob was nice enough to forward a whole bunch of files pertaining to what kind of work they're actually doing. And I just tried to do something and didn't do it. But anyway, the files are amazing. I looked at one or two of them, and I wish I could get them up, and I apologize for that fact. But before we really start talking about Bob, there's two other events that I better go ahead and mention now, because if I don't, I'll forget. Number one is tomorrow is the Chicago Paracon. That's Jack Chavez's event, and that's on the south side, and that's starts at like 1 o'clock, I think it is, and goes till like 6 or 7, something like that. And then, of course, the Paranormal Rockdown, that's at Broadhead Manor, and that's on July 18th and the 20th. Great people. We're all going to be there, and it's going to be a great event. So anyway, Bob, uh, without further ado, I know you've been into the paranormal for. Why don't you do a little introduction on your own and let everybody know exactly what you're up to and what's been going on, and
Okay.
then we'll take it from there.
Um, I've been in the paranormal for most of my life. I grew up in a haunted house, probably like most people that are in the paranormal did.
Yeah.
And but I've been investigating actively since like 2012, something like that. Um, Started with a good friend of mine, Bill Maskell, and he passed away 3 years ago now, I guess. But in the process of myself and Billy, we did branch out. We got Billy's wife, his brother-in-law, and his son. Since Billy's death, all Billy's family is kind of shied away from the investigation thing. So we had brought on Karen Ann Daniels, and very good friend of mine, great investigator, and it's Karen and I now that are, Tempest, the name of our group. And but we've been all over New England. We've got a lot of really good evidence, and we're really fortunate. Some of the evidence that we've captured, it's that good. But I just decided this year, though, that I was going to hang up my investigating. Um, I have a lot of health issues going on, so I can no longer. I was afraid I was going to take a nosedive down a set of stairs or something because I'm stubborn, I'm always lugging too much gear and, trying to make less trips. And a couple of times I had some close calls. So I finally decided I was going to cut that out. And I miss it. I miss it a lot. Karen still investigates. But I will say that we don't have a name or anything yet. And this is just very early, but Karen and I are going to start a podcast this fall, and there'll be more on that coming in the future.
Is that going to be is that going to be all tied together with that Facebook page?
No, this is all separate. We're going to do something completely separate from the real deal, or anything
Okay,
like that.
why don't you explain the real deal to people?
Um, when I started with Billy, and I didn't have a place to post my, or I could just post it on my own wall, but I had like 8 friends, so no one was going to see it. So I started the real deal. And I've been really lucky with that as well. A lot of people took to it. It kind of changed a little bit. At first, it was just and I was hardcore about it. If you didn't post evidence, I just wouldn't allow you to post on it. And I realized that was ridiculous. So I turned the whole real deal around to just promoting everybody else, you know. Anybody in the field that's doing anything that I thought was good, or as long as I didn't hear anything bad about them, I would promote them. And I've always tried to like go to everybody's shows and just at least make an appearance, and I'll post their show on the Real Deal, and it's just a good place to. I'm very happy with it. It's just a good advertising spot for everybody.
Well, it gives me something to do this weekend after the Paracon tomorrow. So Sunday I'll be able to go ahead and check out the Facebook page and that and really look into it. And I apologize that I didn't get to that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you really had one of those until of what we talked about earlier and what I saw on your page.
Well, I'm pretty low key actually. This is only like Karen and I went out with on Chris and Christian's show on Bigfoot and the Bunny, and we were also on Miranda's show, Ghost Biker Garage, and
Okay.
that's it. Years ago, I was on your friend Bruce Holliday's show briefly, and I might have been on, and I was on Keith Bailey's show briefly as well. But we kind of took like a low key. I wanted to get a good body of evidence before we went out and about, and we pretty much got that now. So
Well, that's what sells. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
definitely, definitely.
You
You
know,
see a lot of on at least through my eyes, and there's so if Facebook's a funny thing. I love it, and that's pretty much all that we're on. We have to develop, like, we have a lot of work to do to create. I have my own um, YouTube page, but that's not going to be associated with us either. So we're going to have to create our own YouTube page, and we have a lot of work to do. But we're very excited about it. And now I'm a blabbermouth, so I know a lot of people now since I've kind of made the paranormal my. I was just interested in it. So I just like to go to everybody's shows. I've been in your room many times with you and Reggie, and just sitting quiet and trying to learn, from everybody. People that have been in the field for a while, and you'd be surprised. Well, I'm sure you wouldn't, but a lot of people would be. What you can learn just from sitting and listening to people, it's incredible. There's so many smart people in this field that there's a lot, there's a lot of knowledge out there.
There's a lot of things that go on too, where you've got people that
Oh,
don't behave. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. This
And
and
and not to bring that up because that's not something that is positive. And what we try to do is keep everything in the positive light because our connections are all with spirit to begin with. So we try to, if we keep a positive light, we have a better chance.
yep,
If somebody wants to be negative, let them go be negative somewhere else. Cut and dried. I
yep.
I have I have no issues about that at all. That's the way I
Well,
am.
I try I try every day to be positive. And I think that's all you can do. If you make that like your goal and just to be nice and I have a nasty side to me too. I try to, but I fight to keep that at bay and be the best person I can be, you
But what do you load the shotgun with?
Oh, I don't have any shotgun, so I have a sword behind me, you know?
Oh,
Oh, well, hey, you gotta have something, I mean, but
and you don't eat cheese off it, do you?
no. The cheese is okay, but
I'll tell you, that's you know the the evidence page though. I think when we mentioned it a little bit ago, it seems to be ideal for ITC work. I mean, if somebody wanted to go to a page and wanted to go ahead and see ITC, it's not that common today as it used to be, and it's not common at all. Period.
well,
And
to be honest with you, Greg, Karen, um, my partner is big time into ITC. Never been my thing. Well, I say that now. I've always done EVPs. That's been my thing. More than video or anything. I love audio, and it's amazing what you can capture. I went like the first 2 or 3 years investigating, never caught a thing, but since then I don't remember the last time that I went out that I didn't capture something, you know? I think
okay,
they're everywhere. Um,
okay, let's start out from the beginning of how you did your setup. Okay, I went ahead and I had a brain fart the other day, and I was sitting here and I'm looking and I look at my boxes. And I have a box that's sitting over here that I've been using for probably maybe a year. And I was looking at the box and it was like almost like when you hear that term divine intervention
mhm.
and somebody's telling me you never blessed the box. You never told the box it was yours. You never went ahead called your guides and your angels and said, "This is my box," and then used that little slang term from the one Vietnam movie. This is a box, or this is my box. There are many like it, but this box is mine.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so I started lighting incense, and I started praying, and I have my one meditation that I use quite a bit, and I have my prayers to Saint Michael, and I have my other things that I use, and I said, you know what, you've been an idiot. I've been a friggin' moron because I did not do everything the way it should have been done. Now, do
As
you have
far as what?
as setting up your box, okay? Your boxes or any, if you have one box you use a lot. I had one that it is one of my first ones, and it was from Supernatural Inc. And I
Oh,
and I did,
spirit box you're referring to.
yes, spirit boxes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. You had me. Yeah, I was a little. I
Okay.
like like I owned a couple really nice. I mean, really nice audio recorders. I have since packed all my gear. I actually I gave it to a friend of mine, but because I know that they're going to use it. You know what I mean? And that's what and Karen's got a ton of gear as well. So she's all set. But yeah, I was with Chris and Christian, and we were out in I forget the name of the Isaac Morse house, an incredible location. Um, and the right across the street is the Whitney Morris house or something like that. I forget the name of that, but it's a very popular house as well. Isaac Morris, incredible, probably the most haunted or one of the most haunted places I've ever been, including my own house, which was super haunted. That's neither here or there. But anyway, we were there with Chris and Christian, and Chris was pulled out his spirit box, and I asked a question. Um, what's my cat's name? And I was trying to catch everybody. And I'm, I'm, I've seen full bodied apparitions. I know that paranormal exists, but I'm very, I'm a healthy skeptic on just I've only ever been involved in just the basics, video and audio, and mostly audio. And I never got involved, and that's ITC as well. I mean, if you do a EVP session, you're communicating with spirits, and and I'm using a device to do that. And generally, you don't hear them real time. Once I started wearing headphones, that started changing a little. Sometimes, like Karen and I were in the Conjuring house, and we were upstairs, and Karen asked the question, "Can you see us?" And I could, clear as a bell, I could hear, I could see you, live, and it's just her and me in the entire upstairs of the house, and incredible. And sure enough, when I went back afterwards and played it back, there it was. That's in one of your files I sent you.
Okay.
But wow, but I like that it's real time and I can capture it and I can go back, and I always use Adobe Edition, and I love that program. But all I ever did was add gain, and that was pretty much it. And I recorded in on 32-bit, so you can't blow it out. You know what I mean? No matter, like, usually you see like a flat audio line that's because there's no noise or anything. I
Right.
would take that line and I would boost that up, say 4,000%, and you wouldn't believe some of the stuff I've captured. and it's all hidden in that straight line, and you wouldn't even know it's there. But it's real time, and a lot of times, most of our, to be honest, most of our evidence has been from stationary cameras and stuff, not from our own interactions with whatever house we've been to. And we've done mostly historic. We've done a couple private um, investigations for um, a private homeowner or a business or something, but mostly we stuck to historical because that's what we're good at. Um, and at one time, like I had like probably 14 cameras. And I would come in there and just hop everything in, and everything had a microphone to it. So I could go into a typical house and just from top to bottom cover it with audio and video. And usually I caught a lot on my audio on the cameras that I had posted around.
Wow,
Yeah. Yep, and that's
that's
what we
really
call most
something.
of our stuff. But it was always
So,
straight up stuff. It was never. We just didn't. Billy and we bought an SLS camera. We tried that, and I bought a spirit box. We tried that. We tried our damnedest to contact. We went to Gettysburg, one of the most haunted towns in America. And only on our last day we had a couple, and we were there for a week, 7 days, and
wow,
twice during the day we had a couple really strange, like we pulled the van up and I didn't even have a camera running yet, rookie move, but I just slid the door open in the back seat of the van. We'd rented a van, and we drove from Boston to you know Gettysburg. So I opened the door and we're hearing a battle going on. And we're there like in the first week of April, and there's nothing going on yet. There's no of those battlefield performers or whatever you want to call them out there. There was nobody around, and that was great. We could go wherever we wanted. There were no lines, or it was awesome. But the point I'm getting at, when we pulled out, when we opened that door, we all heard. I mean, like we were right in the middle of this battle, and it lasted maybe 20 seconds. I mean, like we're running around and we're right at the edge of a field. And you know how all those fields, they'll have like a little row of trees, and it's just
yeah,
like it's just to separate one field from the next. And you can usually see through them, and it's not like meant to block anything. It's just a destination, if you will, from one field to the next. We and it was just like the next field over. And I mean, I almost wanted to duck my head because bullets sounded that close to us. Amazing. But the last night we stayed at the Farnsworth house, and I've got some we caught I had a thermal camera at the time as well, a FLIR, a nice one. And in the Jeremy's, in the second floor on the back bedroom, it's the Jeremy Black, I guess his name is. He died in the Civil War there, and we caught what we think is his spirit standing up against a window, but you could only see him through the floor, the thermal camera. You couldn't see him. It's weird. You'd look above the camera, can't see anything, and you could see, roughly. I mean, it wasn't that dark in there. And but you look through the thermal camera, and there he was, and we all took turns coming around, holding the camera, looking at him, and pretty crazy. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Every floor, down in the cellar, up in the attic. Mary Elizabeth, the inn had her as their house detective or investigator, and she would host whoever was coming in to pay. Like we bought like a couple rooms for that night. It was like $750. It was pricey, but we got to stay there overnight though and investigate one of the most haunted inns in Gettysburg. And
Yeah,
it was worth it though. Some of the best evidence we ever got.
yeah. That town is really something.
But
There's so much that goes on in the town too. I'm trying to remember the gentleman, and I don't know how I could forget his name, but Mark Nesbitt.
Mark Nesmith, that name sounds familiar.
Nesbitt is the guy that wrote all the books on Gettysburg.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And right in the town itself, he used to run all the tours. And he had the front of his business was there, and that was the house that there were 2 or 3 Confederate soldiers that were hiding and shooting at people from the backside of this building, because back then it
Oh,
made
well, see,
wagon wheels.
well, that was the Farnsworth house
Yeah,
down until I forget the name of it killed the only woman that died
yeah,
in Gettysburg was shot from the Farnsworth house. The bullet went down and there were bullet holes coming up. That's where Jeremy died. But there was a woman that was shot. I think the Jenny Lynn or
and
something
Jenny
like
Wade,
Jenny Wade. Yes, yes, yes.
and
Yep.
she, and when you see the door, and you see the size of the hole
Oh yeah,
going through the door.
I've been in that Jenny Wade Inn. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I remember looking at that hole and going ahead and saying, "Boy, she never had a chance.
No,
She was
that's
dead. She was dead before she hit the
it was
ground."
a big ball of lead they were firing. I mean, and soft lead at that. So
Yeah.
it was like a pancake probably by the time it hit her.
Oh God, I'll tell
Poor
you
thing.
that. Linda Judd says hi to you, Bob.
Oh, hi, Linda. She's a
And
sweetheart.
yeah, and who else is? Jim Amaret. You know Jim.
I'm not sure. But I met
Said,
Linda through Chris and Christian's show.
oh yeah.
Just being in the audience, watching them, and
There's quite a few people here. Carol Garcia and Barbara Spear and Russ Reynolds.
nice. Let me
There's a whole
see.
bunch. Linda Judd, Jim
Oh,
Feister.
I can. Okay, I can see now.
Okay, but it's 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 really neat that you had that opportunity, because that's where I started when I was 10, and I was with my dad and my grandmother and my uncle and my sister. And my dad was one of these guys that, if you went into some area that big, the first place he could park, he would park, and he would stay there. And it just happened to be Reynolds Woods,
Wow. Now I'm
which is
not familiar with what Reynolds Woods is.
Reynolds Woods was the location on day one of the battle.
Oh, okay.
Reynolds was the major general, so he was the highest ranking officer of everybody that was there, and he had his troops there trying to push the Confederates out of the woods, and
Gotcha.
his aide kept on coming up to his horse and saying, "General, you got to get off your horse. You're just
You're a
somebody,
target.
you're a target. Somebody's going to shoot you." And he just kept on going out. I'm commanding the troops, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And next thing you know, he got shot through the neck, and he was dead. And that we were right at that spot, and we heard, like you said, you heard 20 seconds of a battle.
Yeah.
The wind, the wind would come in. We never moved there. We were there till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon from first, basically when it opened, and or we got in, and it was everything. It was horses screaming. It was,
Yep. That's just what we heard. Cannon fire, the whole 9 yards.
and you had the big balls that would blast apart
Yeah,
in the sky. It
yeah.
was like we were ducking, and I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And then the wind would subside, and then it would slow down.
We knew exactly what it was when we heard it, though. Because I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
come on, it's 2000. I think we were there in 2016 is when we were there in Gettysburg, and I mean, there's no battles like that anymore in America, thank God, and
yeah.
when you hear that and you're like right in the middle of it like that, it's something other than something real. I mean, it has to be paranormal. But
That's
I
that's really.
I did want to say I'm not a non-believer of ITC at all. I'm I've just kept myself to what I had told you, but because
Mhm.
there's so much, all of a sudden I went from like I think I had a protective mechanism growing up where, I tried to believe that paranormal didn't exist. Because, I mean, I remember as a kid laying in my bed and watching my doorknob actually move. You know what I mean? There
Yeah.
was a spirit in our attic that fucked with me my whole, excuse my French, my whole life, though, And so, yeah, but it was
But
pretty
do you have the
intense.
do you have the do you have the same one in there now that's going ahead and screwing with your camera?
Oh, no, it's just me moving, I think. Every time I move, it's trying to refocus. But funny enough, see this doorway right here? And
Yeah.
this was just 3 months ago, 4 months ago. I had my desk at that time. This desk was twisted around. The TV was over here, and there's a big picture window there. And anyway, I'm sitting at my desk, same setup as I have now. I have like a 65-inch TV, and my laptop has an HDMI, and I run it to my television. So I have the big screen for my laptop. But anyway, this door flings open and there's a man standing there, and this all happened in like a matter of like, I don't know, 3 seconds, maybe 5 seconds. Um and he had his hands on his hips, and I didn't really get a look at him, any specific part of him, just that he was all like dark and gray. I didn't see his face, but I could clearly see, like, I could see like his belt loops, for example. I don't know why. I think I was just scared to look at his face, to be honest with you. Because it just took me by total surprise. And then he's gone. The door's shut, like nothing ever happened. And it wasn't like, the door was left open but like when it happened, that door slammed open. I mean, bam, and there he is standing right there. And then I've had like 4 or 5 instances here when I moved here 4 years ago, and I don't know if something followed me from the other house, and but I also live in an old, I'm 68, and I was able, because I was in the military, I was able to get into Braintree's a really nice town in Massachusetts. We're right. I can see, the coast. I can see the ocean if I climbed on top of my building. The USS Salem is parked right down the street from me, you know?
Oh, wow.
Crazy area, beautiful right here. But my point is, a lot of people have died here, you know? These apartments have been here since like the 40s, you know? And they're real nice. And yeah, it's a little cul-de-sac, you know? But I imagine I went out and did a thing, just an experiment. I have a bench outside, and it's just a sidewalk, and the sidewalk runs, and we have like people that do the lawns here. And it's really nice, and it's short money. I where I pay 600 a month, and that's utilities and everything for a beautiful, fully, you know, um, all my utilities and everything are covered. Um, One bedroom apartment, how do you beat that in this area when apartments are going for $3,000? You can't beat that. They take good care of their veterans here, which
That's
is a good,
awesome.
yeah. And funny enough, the guy that I was where I was staying was a friend of mine. I've been living there for 20 years. All of a sudden, um, he came up and said, "Hey, I would like you to move." He wanted to sell the house. He had bought his father's house. His father, they had moved into a retirement home, and so all that happened. So he didn't want to carry both properties, and he knew he had to fix the other house up. But I mean, it was nice to begin with. But anyway, that was the house where I had some major issues going on, and and then I was messing a little bit. That's where I met Bruce Holiday. I had met him online. He gave me some advice, and I had a prayer that he gave me. He emailed it to me. Very nice guy. Um, and he emailed me this prayer to make sure that I said, and I didn't do it every time. I was just because there was nothing happening, and I'm sure I invited something into my home by trying to. I had that SB7, but the double one. I had bought
Okay.
that, and I had the single one as well. And yeah,
So
I was just
you said the 11.
yes, and I had a speaker set up for it, and I was trying my best to contact the spirits. Um, most of my family's passed away. I was trying to contact my mom, trying to contact my dad. Both of them are dead. Anyway, nothing happened, and all of a sudden, everything. Like my friend Billy would come by, and I was smoking cigarettes then, and he come by and bring a coffee donut in the morning, and I play guitar a little bit, and I used to. I picked up a guitar a little while ago, and I couldn't play a thing on it. My fingers are just gone. Be that as it may, Billy would come by, and that's what we would do. We'd have a smoke, have our coffee, and so we're sitting there, and I actually had, I don't know if you can, that chair right there in that corner
Okay.
was, I
Yeah.
had two of those, and they were in my other house.
And
And
they're moving.
no, but I had a clicker sitting on the arm of the chair, and me and Billy sitting in one chair, I'm sitting in the other. I had a flat screen, so it was kind of like a little theater thing, surround sound, and that was the
Yeah.
whole setup. All of a sudden, the clicker, I mean, and it's a Sony clicker, it had to weigh like a half a pound or something. The thing was meaty, it was aluminum, flew like 5 feet right off of the arm of my chair, right into the middle of the room, you know? And yeah, just, and that was just the start of it. I had, my bed, this was a huge apartment, and I had a music studio. And part of the thing I was doing in there, I had this thing where I wrote 10 songs, I copywrote them, and then I learned how to use Pro Tools, and I mixed them, I wrote the music, and I wrote the lyrics. And I have a lot of friends that are musicians. I brought them in to help me, and yeah, I produced 10 songs. But the point is, so I had an Apple computer in this one room, and my bedroom, I had another computer. The thing is sitting in my closet now. But I'm on that computer, and I see this shadow figure like lean in, and I got a clear look at him, and it was just solid inky black, like just like you hear if you were watching like a YouTube video on this. It was like I got a good look at him, and all I saw was two hands. Right, he was right on the door frame, two hands, and like from here up. But I got a good look at his head. I mean, it was just sheer by accident. I just turned around because I caught like a movement out of my peripheral vision, and there he was, And like I said, I got a good look at his face, and it was just like looking into like a big bowl of ink or something, just and it was kind of all twirling around, and you just couldn't see anything there. There was nothing there, or nothing I could see anyway. But so I saw that a couple times. Then I have an Irish friend, Sam, that lives just down the street, and he would come over and we would play chess a lot. That was our thing. We'd have a smoke and a drink and play a few hours of chess. So I'm in on my computer this other day, and I hear Sam's Irish, right from Cork. You can't mistake his accent, And I hear, "Hey, Bobby," and blah blah blah. Come on out and he had no patience at all for computers or anything like that. So I was like, "Let me shut down the program I'm on. I'll be right out." I go out. There's not a soul there. I called him on the phone because I couldn't find him. His car wasn't in the parking lot. Blah blah blah. And he is in Situate, which is like 25 miles away at his house. He wasn't even here. And I swear to God, I heard his voice. This is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. About the same time I saw the Inky guy. So the Inky guy was first, Sam was afterwards, and that was just like, I don't know what you call them, when they mimic somebody, and that's what this ghost was doing. It was mimicking Sam to the T, because I thought it was him. Well, the last straw was I'm sleeping and I have a cat, Sadie, and we wake up at like 3 a.m. She's on the foot of my bed, and she jumps off the bed and she's running and she's got her belly really low to the floor, and she's running and looking. Her eyes are like saucers. We could hear three, and I know I hate to tell the story, but it's true. I heard three loud bangs, not five, not seven, three. And I know it's so cliche that
No.
I never believed it myself until it happened. Because I thought like the three knocks to insult God or whatever, the Trinity or whatever that
Yes. Yes.
represents. I thought that was, not that I'm not religious. I'm very religious. I was brought up Protestant, but I was brought up, very religious. Anyway, but I didn't necessarily believe in that. I thought that was kind of Hollywood type stuff. I didn't realize how far down the rabbit hole things really exist. And so I've just started learning that like the last 8, 10, 12 years of my life. So now I just don't know what to think about anything. So I've been just tiptoeing my way and I have a little bit of ADHD, so I like to really kind of like feel my way and get comfortable with whatever I'm doing. And it's taken me 12 years just to like, I feel I'm a pretty good person as far as taking an EVP or even better at processing it, if you ever get an EVP and you want somebody else to take a second look at it, send it to me. I'll be
I
happy.
will. I will, no problem.
I'm
I think
retired. I
it's,
have nothing to do now, so.
who just came, who's been in the room now for a couple minutes
Bigfoot and the
is,
Bunny media.
yeah,
Obvious.
we were together last night and we just had a great time. And it was like, just like old home week again, you know,
They're good people, real good
you know,
people.
Kristen, and Kristen just lost her mother.
Oh, I didn't
So
know that, Kristen.
yeah,
I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. My God.
that's it. That was so, we started off by, we're going to talk and that kind of thing. And then we just started, she's got to relax a little bit, you
Yeah.
know, which was what she needed. And, it's always been amazing. My end of it compared to what you guys do is my everything I do is with these,
Yeah.
and
Well,
all
that's
the
where I'm
essence
headed. So I should be taking notes, because I can't walk anymore, you know?
is bad. Where were you at in the military? You were
Oh,
numb.
I'm no, 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 no. I just have bad knees and bad hips, and I should have taken care of it years ago, Greg. But I know they're gonna like cut my leg off to make, they
No,
had to separate it pretty kind of. They're physically cutting the bone to put a fake um uh
there's a kneecap in there.
yeah, yeah.
You, you,
I
you
mean
know
they
you
have
know
to.
there's
And
all
the
sorts.
same with the hip as well,
Yeah,
So I haven't gotten my head and I told you I have ADHD, so I just haven't been able to wrap my head around it. So I've been like, and it's just been getting worse. I've been grinding bone. I went and had full X-rays in 2016, and they said, yeah, you can come in, and we'll take care of you, and we'll start the process. One knee, the other knee, one hip, the other hip, and then the recoup period in between. It was like a 2-year process, and I just kept putting it off, And here we are, 2025, and I've never, I still haven't done it, But they hurt like hell, and now I can't walk very good, so I'm re-finding myself sitting right here,
yeah. Well,
Sadly.
there's other procedures too that they use, so it's not they
Oh,
don't
I know,
necessarily
I
have to
know,
cut
I
you.
know, I know.
They
But
rebuild them.
I'm diabetic, so I have neuropathy as well.
Okay.
So my
Oh, that's
feet are numb anyway. So it's like six of one, half dozen of another. Um,
so how not to shirk what you're saying right now because it's very important too. It's your health, but when we were talking about the boxes and that and the spirit boxes and the kind of work I took a change. I changed, and when I changed, it was when I was at Gettysburg the second time, and I was on the triangular down on the triangular field, which was down below Devil's
yep,
Den, and then you've got little round top back here,
yep,
and I I had the whole group that I was with. They were all on top, and it was getting dark, and we had Rosemary Eileen Golly was with us. So she came down with me and her husband, and she said to me, she says, "Where are you going?" And I says, and I saw this piece of granite that was like about 15 feet long, and it was huge, but it was flat, I says, "I'm going to set up my stuff right here." It was halfway down. that hill. And I set it up, and there were some boulders in the corner, and you could see
Yep.
that the big chunks were blowing out of them and everything. And the woods were, I was right by the woods. So I started sort of talking to him. And as I was talking to him, they were doing an EVP session at the top of the hill. And you would hear words. And I've said this numerous times to some of the people are going to go ahead and say, he's on his soapbox again. But, that's the way it is. And I would hear somebody would say, you could hear the boss was on the spirit box and he says, it just said head. And then somebody else said, no, it didn't say head, it said dead. It said dead. And then somebody else says dead. And then somebody else says head. And this was, and I could hear it plain as day. And I'm like over 100 yards away.
Wow.
I'm halfway down that hill. And I just went ahead and I says, for the life of me. And then I just went back into my own little realm and I started talking to the spirit again because I knew they were right there. And I asked them to come out, and I told them I was a vet too, and that we all went through what we went through, and I just was there to see if I could help them in any way, and if I could, I would pray with them. And I says, if you can come out and just hold my hands. And I asked them, and then I felt them. And the reason I brought this up is because when all that crap was going on at the top of the hill, it sort of set the tone for me for the foreseeable future. As far as I came home, I was home for about maybe 3 months, and I started really looking into Estes. And at that particular time was right after the boys were at the Stanley Hotel, and they were the one. You could talk to other people and they say, no, that's not the case, because it was the blind ghost box and that was
I'm not even familiar with the blind ghost box.
well, that was the name to it, to the operation. In other words, instead of doing the Estes with the headphones and the blinders, they just called it the blind ghost box method.
Okay.
And that was
Karen and I had that, but she would set it up and I would go away and do my own thing, and she would run that.
And then you record everything that she's doing when she's running it.
Yep. And you know how and we never got there 100%. We did a couple of times but I had to donate my camera to her Estes method for it to work. And what I needed to do, and I never did it, was buy like a field monitor. You can get them for a couple $100, And what you do is you have a camera on the person that is doing the Estes method, that's got the headphones on. You have a camera on them, and I had my Sony on Karen, and then I had a Rode wireless microphone set up. So I had the receiver on the Sony, and I had Karen wired. And well, she had like it clipped at her belt, and then put up a lav mic and clipped it up here, so it was smaller than that big bulky thing, hanging off. Mm-hmm. And I had the same thing 2 rooms over, And what we would do is you take then all I could do was I had a 25-foot HDMI cable, and with my laptop through OBS, if you had an internet connection, you could physically see and hear what she was saying. So if I asked a question 50 feet away with 2 doors shut between us, because I was running that flat HDMI wire to her, right? To the Sony, right? That's what was connecting the HDMI out on my Sony camera, filming her, was going out to my laptop. You know what I mean? So that was how I was seeing and hearing. So I could say, okay, is there any Taylors here? You know, we were in Leffingwell, Connecticut, in a 1700s house, and they had a tailor that lived there. You know, anyway, that was a good, because you could hear. So if something didn't work, you could hear, okay, well, but if something was working, you could chase that, you know. Whereas with an EVP, I could never do that. It was all blind, you know. I'm just talking to the, you know, an empty room as far as I'm concerned, and you know, asking a series of questions and whatever, then you know, you kind of base it on what you feel and everything else. But yeah.
Jenna's here. She's changed her first name though. She says it's Goober. You know Jenna in the stars,
No,
the starry sky.
no, no.
She's a great lady. I mean, there's not a person in here that's not a great lady.
I know
Well,
Liz. I love Liz. Hi, Liz.
Liz is from Ireland, right?
Scotland.
Scotland. Oh man,
Scotland.
she's gonna
Oh yeah.
she's gonna shoot me. I'm sorry,
I
Liz.
I used to play Eve with a whole crew of Scottish guys, and they were crazy. Yeah, it's an online game, an outer space game, but it's intense. Like mostly, like it's like for like rich lawyers and shit, because it's
Linda's
expensive
saying
to
bye.
play.
Linda
Bye,
just said
Linda.
goodnight. But that's really interesting. You know, I was curious on how you run all that, and we can talk about it between now and the next show and that too, as far as setups are concerned, because I I we have done so many sessions now. Uh, there's people in here that are part of the team, and I don't know if you watch Wednesday's show.
I did not, but I do watch periodically.
Well, I mean, have you ever, what we do, right? Where we
Yes,
do
I do.
double Estes.
Yep, yep. I followed Chris and Christian over to your show a couple of times and watched, you know. And like I said, I found it interesting, but it's I haven't tipped my toe into that pond yet, you know. So for me, there was a lot of what was going on was right over my head, you know. I'm just being straight up with you, you know.
The,
And
the the amazing thing about this, Bob, that's really going to get you, and it got me too. It was brought up by a couple of the ladies, and it was the fact that we're interested in correlations. We're interested in bantering back and forth that happens between people that there's no way they have any idea that they're doing it, yet they're going ahead and they're saying key words that they're both on the same track.
yep,
And then right out of nowhere, you know what's happening in the background is there's EVPs.
yeah. Now,
And go
let
ahead.
me ask you this question. And because this happened to me, and I got sidetracked earlier. When I was with Chris and Christian, and Chris pulled out a spirit box at the Isaac Morris, I had asked what my cat's name was. Instantly, over the spirit box, you hear Sadie, and that's her name, you know? And I had never said it the whole time we were there. So I'm all, you know, psyched about this. I go home, I process it, I post it. And I don't know if it was Linda Judd or who it was, but somebody had said to me that probably what happened was, or what could have happened, and I never even considered this up until this point, was that I was putting out her name in my head in that room, and the people there, the spirits, could hear me putting out my thoughts. Even though I didn't physically say her name, I was thinking it. And because I'm not trained to close my wall myself off or whatever, they could clearly hear my thoughts. Um, and that's ITC, I guess. That was what I was told. But my question to you is, since that can happen, because that just blew me away, when they said that. So like I could say, I could be talking, say, to my father, right? And I think I'm talking to my father, my dead father, and it may not be him at all. He's the spirit, good, make good, bad, whatever. And I know there's different shades of gray all the way down to pitch black or whatever. Um, they could just be reading my thoughts the whole time, and it may not even be my father, even though they're answering those key questions and giving me, because I have all that info in my head. So that spirit is just reading me and then telling me what I want to hear, which makes me think it's my father when maybe it's not. And the skeptic in me, I'm fight with that constantly because I've got so many good EVPs and stuff, but I've always questioned, what side of the fence, or was I really talking to who I thought I was talking to, or was I? And I'd like to hear your, take on that.
I would not go on the words themselves. I would go on the sound that I was hearing. So, in other words, if it was very familiar to my father's voice, I would go
Well,
more on that than the answer.
I've heard mimics before, though, like I told you with
Right,
Sam.
right.
So, that's why I'm just, I'm fighting with that in my own, how
We
do we know who we ever are talking to?
we you know when we start out, we always say prayers, and I always go ahead and offer up for the highest good, and that is to communicate with spirit, and we're at their mercy. Now, there's a lot of people that can speculate about anything they want, but if you're in a good session and you've actually asked them for permission to go ahead and communicate with you, I have a tendency to believe them more
So it's
than
more
not.
your heart probably you're listening to than the
Right.
actual.
And I've been talking. I have Scotty Rourke is my mentor, and I don't know if you know who he is,
I'm not
but
familiar with him.
he's a psychic medium that's uh, an awesome guy, and that was something that I was taught.
So was you born a psychic as well? I mean,
No,
I take that back. I think we're all born with
no,
abilities,
we
but
all have gifts.
yes. But with that being said, have you just like, did you have to like really pursue something and to work at it, or was it
Yes,
natural for you?
it was. There were little parts in between that just fell into place, but when I really went ahead and I studied with him, uh, I got to the point where there were indicators and signs, and on the road, there was one thing that happened that was really remarkable, and it was like we were doing these Estes sessions out at a for our school, and it's out in the far side of Iowa.
Okay.
And I had told my partner, because we would do a lot of doubles, and I had told him, you know, reminded him that we had done a couple doubles back here around here where we were picking up above the white noise, we were getting ticking. And it was like, it almost sounded like
Like
Morse
a
code.
clock or
No,
Morse code.
it was like Morse code.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it was getting freaky.
Wow.
Okay. And it can, and then,
You
you know, and it wouldn't just come on in the beginning. It would happen at its own pace. In
Wow.
other words, it wasn't like it was part of what I was
Right.
listening to.
Right. I
It
understand what
was
you're
it
saying.
was brought into it. And so we had a session out there, and my partner, he sort of freaked. He got and he just killed the session, and I have it on. We filmed it, and he stopped. So we there was a roundtable discussion that was on Facebook that had some people like the Rathman, it had Tony Rathman, and it had, I don't think Iacovati was there. Austin Maynard was there. And I don't know, maybe KD was there too, but they were a bunch of them. And I went ahead and put in the comments, I said exactly what I had just told you,
Yep.
that this happened and there was this ticking. And there, and is this, do you people think that I was sort of communicating with space people or aliens? And they just sort of were looking at each other across the table, and they start getting a smile on their face, and they go ahead and they looked at, and I think one of them was Tony, and they looked at each other and they went, "Wow, isn't that what Frank was all about?" You know who Frank is, right?
No, no.
Frank Sumption. Frank Sumption is the man that made the first spirit box, and he
Okay.
made it. Okay, the story I can remember when I was a kid, and I would go to the drugstore.
Oh, didn't his daughter pass away or something and he built that to communicate
No,
with
no, no,
her? Or,
no. That's somebody entirely different.
oh, I'm sorry. That's a millimeter I'm thinking of.
That's a Mel. That's
Yeah.
Mel. This was the first spirit box, but
Okay.
when you open up the science mechanic or mechanical, whatever it is, the magazine,
Popular mechanics. Yep.
Popular Mechanics, on the inside cover of it was, you can speak to space people. And they showed you, all you have to do is do this, you go order this diagram, and they'll show you how to build this box, and you can communicate with space people. And I saw that, and
Now, do you think that they assumed that spirits were just space people?
I
Or or were they on track talking to aliens or
I think it was more foreseeable for it to be aliens at the time than it was for people to readily accept spirit
well, what was the
or
radio
ghosts.
show that happened in New York there? Everybody freaked out when he did it, remember?
Yeah, that's
Because
Orson Welles.
yeah, because he had said, "Oh, they're landing," and blah blah blah, and I mean, it was pandemonium. So people weren't ready for that. And to be honest with you, I think that's what Skinwalker Ranch and all this crap is about. I think the government is pushing this, um, trying to get us as a society ready by just filming. I mean, if you look at TV now, I have Amazon Prime. There's going to be 50 different paranormal shows on every day. Now, a lot of it's a bunch of hooey. It's Hollywood. But with that being said, they're still talking about the paranormal. Even if they're full of shit, they're still spreading the word, and
Right.
getting people used to the idea of hearing that. So yeah.
You know, that whole idea though, but when he said that, and you know, Frank made that box, and then he made a bunch more, and there was somebody in the paranormal field that had saw this and says, "Whoa, wait a minute, maybe we can talk to spirit with this box instead of aliens." But Frank was known as the Purple Princess, and that's in his book. And he was known. He when they communicated with him, they didn't call him Frank. They would ask for the Purple Princess.
Okay.
So I mean, and this was not from here,
Right.
but
Right.
it was so crazy.
Well, are you familiar with the now? When I first looked up ITC, this is 20 years ago, I came up with this lady from New Hampshire, and I was told supposedly she started the whole ITC movement, and her son had died, and a movie came out, and it was on YouTube for the longest time. I forget the name of it, but it was about her, and not just her, but her son though had died. I forget how he died, but he was calling her up on the telephone, the physical telephone, you know, and that was where the whole ITC thing came from, with anything electrical, you know.
Uh,
You could talk to spirits.
when
Well,
they
that's my understanding anyway. Way before the spirit box or any of that was this woman from New Hampshire that her son had passed away, and she just refused to. Well, she could hear him. You know, it wasn't like she was looking for him at first. I guess he called her, and then that got her believing in the
at
afterlife.
at the same time, it could have been at slightly a different time. There was a machine that was called a Spiricom that was, and I could be off on that name, but I think I'm on it this time. And it was a company, and they were going to make a machine that was going to talk to spirit, to dead people.
Yeah, well, that was a big thing. I mean, look at the,
So that,
like Lincoln's wife, and.
and this was in the 50s. This was in the early 50s,
Yep.
and they want, and there's a whole book or a whole pamphlet that that shows you how to put this thing together. A whole company did this all up, and what happened was, like, about 3 weeks before it was going to be finished, one of the leading people on the team died,
Wow.
and they got the machine together, and guess who came through?
Him. When my partner died, I had a millimeter with me, and I didn't take it out at the funeral. I wanted to. And I know Billy wouldn't have minded if I did that, but I was afraid I was going to offend somebody there and it was improper. And I mean, I was sitting there, I was crying, I was touching him, and I could feel him, I could feel his spirit was there, and I just wanted some confirmation of that. But like I said, I thought it was, if I could have snuck it and got away with it, if it had been wintertime and I had a heavy coat on or something, I probably would have. But I didn't want to, cause any ill to anybody. So I behaved myself. But
Yeah, that's something that, we're all, it's all inbred in us, and that's the only time that
right.
we really they deem respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's like the
there's
fallen towers and everything. That's still off limits. It's
oh I
still
I
considered poor form to, you know,
the stories that come out of there. I'll tell you the one story about it was a brother and a sister, and the sister came or the brother came into town, and it was the night before, and the sister says, "I want to take you out to dinner tonight," and they went up to the top of the tower,
Oh, jeez.
and they were having dinner, and she said, "Wine's on me," and she had the maitre d' or whoever it was come over, and she says, "I want two of your best bottles," and did that, and had the receipt in her little purse.
Yep.
Had that all in there and everything else from that night. And he says, I got to at least cover half of it. She says, "No, it's on me." And he just couldn't comprehend why. And then it was like 3 weeks later, they found, her billfold. And inside was the receipt, and everything else was sort of tattered and torn, but the receipt was like
Wow.
perfect.
Wow.
And it was like,
So
you
she
talk about,
passed there.
oh
She
yeah,
passed. Wow.
oh yeah,
Wow. 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 That's sad.
yeah. But they still do communicate. I This guy DK or whoever he was, he comes off of YouTube, and or D or whatever his name is, and I just sort of blow him off. Or I'd like to go ahead and tell him just to be nice, and he is nice. He hasn't said anything inappropriate, so
Oh, DK.
yeah, whatever it is.
I was reading Liz's comment there. And Liz, I was actually with a friend of mine, Dave Hall. He really good guy. We were working at the GH Found Company in Redstone, New Hampshire, and we worked a 3 to 11 shift, and we were just getting out of work, and I lived in Innervale, New Hampshire, just the other side of North Conway. It goes North Conway, Innervale, Kearsarge, so on and so forth. So we were hitchhiking, and we didn't have a car, and we shared a house with two other guys, um, in Redstone. I mean, in Innervale, and so we walked across the street, and there was this flying saucer. I could have taken a rock and hit this thing, and it was sitting there silent. I mean, and it was just hovering. It was probably 45, 50 feet in diameter, about 30 feet off the ground. And we were just like, my jaw was on the ground. And there was some lights. It was no lights at all when we first walked across the street. Then the lights were like poof, not like shining down on us, but it just turned on inside of the saucer. We saw it, and then it was just like bam, and it was gone. I mean, it just put the pedal to the metal. And so we ended up catching a ride, and there's a Dunkin' Donuts in North Conway, and we had them let us off there because there was like 3 cops cars at the coffee shop there, and we got out there, and I went in, and everybody was laughing at us. They didn't believe us, but we wanted to report it. And the cops did take our report down, so we'd have a record of it. But yeah.
Are they? You know, I've seen them a lot. I saw them a lot in Upper Michigan, up on off of Lake Superior.
I grew up in Freiburg, Maine. That's where I grew up. I
Oh,
moved
then
down to
that was
the
a great
Boston
area.
area later on in life, but it's awfully bright here. But up in Maine, you could see everything. I mean, you can't see your hand in front of you at night if the stars are out. It's that
Yeah,
black. But
that's awesome. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to be able to go through when you come back, and hopefully you can have Karen go ahead and show up and
Oh,
that opened my
she
shit.
asked, she said to apologize. She couldn't make
Oh,
it. It was the
that's okay.
last second thing, and she just, her
I
granddaughter
want
comes.
I want to thank everybody that's been in the chat, and then Bigfoot and the Bunny go ahead and go hum. Oh boy, puff puff pass.
I've been behaving myself tonight. Don't get me going.
But that's really great, and it's like we've gone an hour and a half, and it just time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, it
And
was a pleasure, Greg. Thank you.
it was, oh, Bob, anytime. It's amazing. And this is long, long overdue. I
And
knew it. I knew it back then, and it's just the fact that you get so wound up in things, and you have the
oh,
list of names, and you just,
it's so easy to believe me, and vice versa.
oh,
I'm I'm very I if I like right now, I watch Miranda Young's show, and I tune in. It's at 7 for the historic Scott County Jail. Um, I saw one of their shows, and they had the I forget his name. He's a storyteller, and he's brilliant. And he told this story, the story of the historic Scott County Jail, and I got
oh,
hooked anyway. So I started following um, Miranda and Chris, and then and then at 9 o'clock I watch Miranda as well. But in,
she's an amazing woman.
incredible, and both of them are incredible. They give it 150% there every day. I mean, they're running that village and the jail, and Miranda's doing Ghost Biker Garage on top of both of those. So, and Chris is doing Soul Sisters. So, yeah,
I had asked her one night. I says, you're leaving a location. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I says, who escorts you when you get on your motorcycle?
she's packing.
Well, I know that, but I mean, still, she gets on that
Oh,
motorcycle all by herself on
oh,
those
I
dark
know.
roads.
She's quite the woman.
You know,
If I was 40 years younger, I would move to Tennessee, but sadly, I couldn't keep up with her.
and all my friends. I a close friend of mine is the one that owns old old South Pitt, and he owns Harriman now, and he lived right up here, and now he's living down there. He finally gave up on going back and forth, and it's beautiful down there. Tennessee is,
I
you
can't
got.
handle the poisonous stuff.
Oh, okay.
When I was in the Air Force, or I got to South Dakota, me and a buddy ran out into this field, like 150 yards out there. We were in like grass up to here, and it finally dawned on us there were rattlers everywhere. And we probably shouldn't be out there running around just carefree like we were a couple kids. And yeah. Um, Mount Rushmore was right there. We'd done some rock climbing where you come up over a little ridge and there'd be like 10 rattlers just laying on I hate that shit. We got nothing in Maine that's gonna jump out and bite you and kill you. No spiders. I mean, it's too cold up there. And I like
Too,
that. I like it that way.
look what he says. Too high to pee on a plane means,
I'm grounded.
well, Bob, thanks a lot. It's been a great
Yes,
show. If
thank you, Greg.
you want to hang around for a few minutes, I'm going to say
Sure.
goodnight to everybody, and then
Sure.
we'll go ahead. Okay, everybody,
Good
thank
night,
you very much
everybody.
for
Thank
being here.
you. That was a pleasure.
It's been an awesome show, and you guys have all been great. I didn't see any questions, so it's just atypical, a great conversation. And with great conversation, a lot of times you don't need questions. So, with that being said, we're going to end the show and say goodnight to everybody. So, you guys have a great weekend. And don't forget, tomorrow is the Chicago Paracon on the south side of Chicago. And then we've also got the Paranormal Rockdown July 18th through the 20th. And we'll take it from there. You guys all have a great evening and a great weekend. And we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot for being here. Love and hugs. We'll see you.